Hello, BookTube, and happy Halloween, everybody. I thought I would do some sort of Halloween commemorative video today, and I wasn't sure what it would be. And then I saw a Halloween tag on Kelly's channel, Books I'm Not Reading, which had not only Kelly, which is wonderful enough, she's one of the nicest people on BookTube, but also Jason, her husband, and an appearance by Blue. So it was a BookTube trifecta. And this is the Halloween tag. I don't know who made it originally, but I'll leave a link to Kelly's video down below. It's all Halloween themed questions, so it's perfect to commemorate the day. And question number one is, what is your favorite Halloween movie? And here we could separate this in terms of either a specifically Halloween themed movie or just a scary movie. And I have answers for both. For a Halloween themed movie, the greatest Halloween movie of all time is, of course, It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, which I watch every year and love every year. I get something new out of it every year. In terms of scary movies, I would go all the way back to 1983 to a movie that premiered on TV and that had some of the highest rated TV ratings in the history of the industry, called The Day After by the very talented movie director Nicholas Meyer, which is about thermonuclear war. It's not supernatural. It's about a fear that was oppressing the back of our minds, everybody back then, is what happens if the Soviet Union and the United States have a full exchange of nuclear weapons. What happens? And The Day After shows that. It shows you the quotidian daily activities of a group of people leading up to that moment, and then what follows after it. And it is still has the power to viscerally shock. It was definitely horrifying for me at the time. Then question number two. Question number two is hilarious. If you were in a horror movie, how far would you get? How long would you last before the horror movie took you over? And I hear it depends on what kind of a horror movie it is, what kind of danger it is. If it's thermonuclear war, then I would be incinerated, the same with anybody else. But in a normal conventional horror movie of some kind or other, it's fun to estimate what are your skills that might allow you to get through. And I can think of three on my own part that might help. I don't know. It would depend on the nature of the supernatural event. One is that I have excellent night vision. Really, really excellent night vision. I can see in what you would consider to be complete darkness. Another is that I get along really well with dogs. I get along with dogs I've never met before, usually very quickly, and they get along with me. Sometimes they're perfectly happy to do what I ask them. And that has helped me during the years when I traveled. That was a godsend, an absolute godsend, is that I didn't have to worry about a village dog charging me and mine. I can't help but think that it would. I mean, it's not true for all dogs. Some dogs are just not friendly, but it's pronouncedly true in my life. It's been an X factor in my favor in many circumstances in my life. So I have to think maybe it might help me in a horror movie, that maybe the dogs in the neighborhood might come in handy. It might be helpful in a horror movie if I could just tell Cujo to sit down and have him listen. And then the third thing that might help me, I don't really know, would be lore. Sometimes in horror movies, the person who knows the lore lasts a little longer than the people who don't. And I'm not in Jason Harrigan's league, but I know a fair amount about supernatural literature and supernatural lore. That might help me out. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm curious to know what your answers will be to that one. Then Jason and Kelly add another addition to that, which is to share some scary books. And I don't really scare with horror fiction. It really doesn't work on me like that any more than actual horror movies do. I usually am appreciating a horror novel for other things, for other reasons. I've read a lot of Dean Koontz and really liked it. His Odd Thomas books I really like. Lightning, one of his forays into science fiction. Watchers, because one of the main characters is a dog. Peter Straub, I love. Clive Barker, I've liked almost everything that I've read by him, but not for the horror reasons, just for the skill of the execution. So when it comes to this question, I've mentioned before, I've recommended The Light at the End, an urban vampire novel that I like a lot. And also George R. R. Martin's short story, Sand Kings, is very effective done. It's very effective horror. What are you doing, baby girl? What are you doing? Poor little thing developed a hot spot on the base of her tail. It's driving her crazy. It doesn't seem to be bothering her anymore. That's great. It was driving her crazy all morning. Anyway, Sand Kings used to be the title of a book, an old Timescape paperback that collected Sand Kings and a bunch of other great pre-Song of Ice and Fire George R. R. Martin stories. Strongly recommend that, any of them, but Sand Kings is really well done. Then the next prompt is, what is your favorite memory of Halloween? I don't have many favorite memories of Halloween. I've never been to a Halloween party, for instance. I've never been to a costume party. And trick-or-treating, years before that was always tricky for me, no pun intended, because I had a crowd of dogs around me. And that could always complicate things because they were only taking orders from me. They weren't taking orders from anybody else. And I was never willing, at Halloween or at any other time, to impose dumb human restrictions on my dogs. I was almost never willing to do that. This is the one of the only lines that I of dialogue that I remember from my own father over and over again, a fairly tight-lipped man, was, "Can't you control those dogs?" And the answer, no one ever had the courage to say it to him, me least of all. But the answer was, yeah, he can. He's just not. That's all. It's the same thing is true with trick-or-treating. So I don't really have many fond memories of trick-or-treating. Then number 4 is your best or worst Halloween costume. To the best of my knowledge, I have never worn a Halloween costume. I've never been to a Halloween party. But I do have a Halloween costume favorite. It's just not me. Well, it wasn't me wearing the costume. It was me being the costume. When I worked at the bookstore, one of my young coworkers one year went to the staff Halloween party dressed as me with the gray sweater vest and a gray wig and an armful of books and a lot of obnoxious fun poking at everybody. And apparently, I didn't go to the party, but apparently everybody knew who she was. No, she didn't need to explain the costume to anybody. I've often wondered where the photographs are. I saw them once upon a time. They're somewhere. Maybe my Deb has them. But that'll count, I think, for a costume story. Then number 5 is, how do you get in the Halloween spirit? I don't really get in the Halloween spirit, because it involves random ringing of doorbells. And for a long time, I had beagles. And every ring of the doorbell would spark a gigantic chorus of baying that would only just barely die down before the next bell rang. It was sometimes could get really horrible. One time for years, I had a very old beagle, Weiser. He came to me as an old man. Just a round, white-faced, white-bodied old beagle. Sweet, sweet creature, but he bayed reflexively when he heard a doorbell, even on TV. And he had years before lost his voice. So when he would bay, it sounded like I was killing him. He would go, It's horrifying. And then after the beagles, I had a pointer named Malin who was very nice, very sweet, but a little high-strung and didn't like random doorbell ringing. So I don't really get into the Halloween spirit. I don't put candy out. I always hope that people won't show up. But one thing that Jason mentioned in connection with this question that I wanted to second myself was David Lowery's movie A Ghost Story, which is amazingly good. Jason and I have a feeling do not agree on many movies, but this is one that you absolutely should see if you haven't seen it already. It is amazingly good. It's unbelievably sad in a thorough, a sort of pervasive way. It's an unbelievably sad movie. It's not like it's a movie in which a sad thing happens. It's a very sad movie, and it will stick with you. But it's intensely good. I strongly recommend it. Then number 6 is favorite Halloween decoration. I don't decorate for Halloween. I don't want to encourage people to come over and ring the bell. So the only decorations that I've seen, and I've loved them, have been in the last few weeks when the Bean and I have seen all kinds of Halloween decorations when we go out on our walks. Skeleton arms coming up out of the ground, tombstones of every shape and description, big papier-mâché spiders with LED glowing red lights, eyes, and whatnot. All very fun. I have smiled a lot, sort of melancholy, because in years past when I've seen decorations like that, when I've had crowds of beagles, they would go nuts. Just nuts. They would see these things, they didn't know what to make of them. They'd be freezing solid or making a perimeter or maybe even baying. Frida knows exactly what they are. She doesn't need any help from me. She sees these things. She knows exactly what they are. She even seems to sense why they're there and just scoffs at them. It's just my little Hanoverian warrior princess. She'll see one of those decorations, and I swear the look on her face is, what kind of a loser needs to do this? And then we just move on. She just drags me on. uh, then number 7 is name one unusual thing that you're afraid of. And here, by unusual, I'm going to go by statistics, which is shark attacks. You're statistically incredibly unlikely to be attacked by a shark. You up those odds considerably if you put yourself in a shark's kitchen. I know 2 young people who go surfing every dawn off the coast of California. For years and years, I knew a woman who used to swim out from her beach in a straight line past the breakers, well out past the swells, and swim from point to point all morning long. That is, simply put, insane behavior. That is absolutely insane. Either one of those things is insane behavior. I'm not talking about that. I would never voluntarily swim in the ocean. That is just insane. But in terms of an irrational fear, being attacked by a 10-foot long creature that wants to eat me, that's a pretty visceral fear. And added to that, the added element of that is a hammerhead shark that can get awful long. They can get to 10 feet, and they are known to attack humans. But something about being attacked by a creature that looks so weird would be even worse for me. I'm glad that neither one of those things is ever. I have literally zero chance of that ever happening, but that's on my mind. And then we have a bunch of dichotomies here. Number 8 is vampires or zombies. Here for vampires, I'm going to go for vampires for the human drama, because you've got a villain, you've got a kind of good versus evil story with a vampire, even if the vampire isn't really any more than an animal, like in Salem's Lot, for instance, where usually the vampire is very human, only very evil, immortal, and more souped up, but still a recognizable adversary for the humans. That creates a good dramatic story. It would be zombies only if I'm thinking of being in the situation. The idea that you don't die, that you become one of these monsters, these ravenous monsters, totally against your will, and just sort of shamble around from then on. That is horrifying in a personal way if you thought of it happening to you. I mean, I think of the movie Dawn of the Dead, where Ving Rhames is leading a ragtag group of humans against a zombie apocalypse. They're just trying to survive. And I forget the name of the character actor, but he's really good in the movie. He's a sort of an ordinary guy, smart, courageous, but not an action hero. And he goes along, he helps out with all throughout the movie, and then at the end, he decides to sacrifice himself to the zombies to buy time for his friends to get away. So there's a scene where we see him standing there with a horde of zombies running towards him from the background. The idea that the most intelligent character in the movie would suddenly become a brainless, ravening creature, that has a horror of its own to it. But for dramatic purposes, it would be a vampire, definitely. Then number 9 is werewolves or ghosts. Here I'm going to say werewolves anyway, sort of for the old team spirit, but also because I'm still in the thrall of Werewolf by Night on Disney Plus, a Marvel Disney product, loosely adapting Marvel's comic book character Werewolf by Night, only really, really well. It's the Werewolf by Night production that they did. I think it's just a one-off. I don't think it's going to be a series of any kind, but it's tremendously good, just tremendously. I would not have thought that Disney Marvel could produce anything that was any good, much less this good. But it's got Werewolf by Night. It's even got Man-Thing in it, and it's wonderful. So I'm going to say werewolves anyway. Then number 10 is creepy dolls or creepy clowns. I have to confess, neither one of these, I've never seen the horror appeal in either one of them, the horror potential in either one of them. I give the nod just a little, I guess, to creepy dolls because the Chucky movies struck me as very funny. I liked them more as they went along. I think they got more and more absurd as they went along and funnier. But I've never found either one to be particularly scary. No. And then question number 11 is bullseye right between the eyes. It's, do you believe in ghosts? And my simple answer is no. I don't believe in ghosts. My more complex answer would be that I also, in addition to not believing in ghosts, which is entirely a private thing, I also don't think ghosts are real. And those are two different conversations, and we can, you can have them or not. Someone who tells me that they believe in ghosts has not done anything wrong at all. I'm going to ask them a ton of questions. I'm going to learn a lot about them, and that'll be that. Somebody who tells me that they believe ghosts are real, believe it or not, those are two separate things. One is saying what you believe, the other is making a fact claim about reality. And those aren't the same, and so my more complex answer would deal with the second one, which is that ghosts aren't real. Not in the real world. You can believe anything you like, but no part of you survives the death of your body. There is no part of you other than your body. You are your body. You are your biology. You are your brain. When that goes away, all of the rest of it goes away. Everything goes away. There's nothing living inside you that's independent of your biology. Now, if you believe that there is, in his answer to this question, Jason is a religious man, and he mentions that he believes in souls. It's not a big leap to go from souls to ghosts. And that's just fine. That's just fine. That's the product of endless, fascinating conversations, not anything else, certainly not condescension. But that's a drastically different thing from telling me that ghosts are real, like all the hucksters do. In order for you to tell me that, you need to prove it. Then it stops being a question of what you believe and becomes a question of proof, of you being able to demonstrate it. And in 17,000 years of human existence and in 400 years of organized science, no one has ever been able to produce that. No one has ever been able to prove that there's anything living inside you independent of your body. Not in any way. There have been a million different offers. There are standing offers of tens of thousands of dollars for anybody who can demonstrate that in a scientifically rigorous scenario. So not a scenario that is designed to make it impossible to prove, but a scenario that is designed to not need proof, to not need belief, rather, to have belief not be an element. We want a simply constructed and easily reproducible experiment to demonstrate that there's something non-material, there's some non-material component of your life, of you. To put it in the simplest possible terms, we're talking about ghosts or souls or whatever. All of those things are predicated on the belief that there is a non-material part of you. It would have to be non-material because you're saying that it survives the death of your material self. And there isn't such a thing. There isn't. If you have spent hundreds of years looking for a scientific verification of that thing and have consistently, predictably failed to find it, it is safe to say it does not exist. At least for me, it's safe to say that it does not exist. If you say that it does, the burden is on you to prove it. And no one ever has. And I don't believe that anyone ever can, any more than you could prove that, as I always say, a squirrel that you see burst on the side of the road has some squirrel, some immaterial squirrel self somewhere else, in some other acorn tree or whatever. You wouldn't even think that such a thing were true for a squirrel. It's no more true for you than it is for that squirrel. You are a biological organism. You're an animal. The only difference between you and that squirrel and every other animal is that you are able to say that you're not. But other than that, than linguistic defiance, there is nothing else. If there is, prove it to me. Show it to me. You can aver it all you like, but that doesn't help. That might spark a conversation, a very interesting conversation. I had so many interesting conversations with people about ghosts that they claim to have seen. It teaches me a lot about them. It teaches me a lot about how they grieve. But it is a well-known psychological fact that humans in the process of grief often imagine, often hallucinate, a visitation by the recently dead. That's a common thing. That happens across cultures, across age groups, across religious beliefs. It's a common psychological thing. It's probably an after effect of the way the human brain works, where we're not just seeing someone, we're constructing a mental homunculus of them, who they are, apart from when they're right in front of us. That mental homunculus has a kind of separate existence from that person, right? When I think of Jason and Kelly, I'm not thinking of just the last video that I saw of them. I'm thinking that I have put together a mental version of them based on all the stuff that I've seen. That mental version lasts longer than the living person sometimes, if it does. And if it does, think about it like you're staring at an intricate pattern of light, and then you close your eyes. You can still see that pattern. For a little bit, you can still see that pattern. That's what that phenomenon is. And that's well known. That's well documented that the human mind does that. So that's fine. We can talk about that as a phenomenon, but we can't talk about that as literally being a visitation from that person. If we're going to talk about that, then you have to tell me what from that person survived and how. You have to show that to me. And you can't. So there, you get the short answer and the long answer for this final question. Do you believe in ghosts? Not only do I not believe in ghosts, but ghosts aren't real. So happy Halloween. So there you go. That is the Halloween tag. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm not going to tag anybody because Halloween will be over by the time I post this. But I want you all to do it. I want your answers to all of these things, especially in some ways, especially the last one. If you have a ghost story, I want to hear it. Absolutely. I absolutely want to hear it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.